I recently got the opportunity to collaborate with a group of doll artists around the world on a doll making project with a ghostly spooky theme, so of course I jumped at the chance. This is my take on the theme of Victorian Revenants. I've been really excited to get started on this one. Today I'm starting on my collaboration doll for the Victorian Revenants themed collaboration on Instagram with the Doll Artists Collective. I will put a link down to their Instagram account in the description if you'd like to have a look at the rest of the dolls, but I will put a photo up at the end of the video. So the theme, as I said, for this collaboration is Victorian Revenants. This is a collaboration that was open to all of the followers of the Doll Artists Collective at all skill levels. The artists who run the Doll Artists Collective account make mostly Monster High repaints, which are absolutely incredible. You should definitely go and have a look at their work. Again, there will be links down in the description. But when I heard about the collaboration, I messaged the owners and asked if textile dolls were welcome, and they said yes, definitely. So I was so happy to be able to be included in this. So some of the inspiration examples that they gave us for this theme: Victorian ghostly figures like the mourning widow, the candlelit bride, or the veiled spirit. Seance inspired, like the medium, the ectoplasmic apparition, or the spirit child. The resurrected and restless, the graveyard wanderer, the forgotten heiress, the phantom soldier. So I think where I'm going to go with this theme is I'm going to go with a graveyard wandering spirit, a ghostly apparition in white and maybe some pale greys. I've already started sewing the pieces. I'm making a 10-inch bead jointed cloth doll for this. So I have sewn those pieces. These are ready to turn and stuff. I've got some broderie anglaise and some lace. So I'm going to make an opulent Victorian gown. Hopefully. I've got some other little bits of fabric, some little subtle pinstripe and some grey that I may use somewhere. I've got some nice vintage look pale grey cotton lace. For the hair, I haven't decided yet on the hair. I could go with white. I've got a bit of white acrylic super chunky yarn. Or I could go with a silvery metallic grey. Or I've got this other super chunky acrylic yarn. I think this colour is called Unicorn. It's kind of I don't know how well it shows up on camera, but it's kind of a very pale pearly purpley grey, but it's quite, once it's all unraveled, it's quite subtle. It's quite pale and ethereal looking, so that is a possibility. So I'm going to start stuffing the pieces today. I will need to find some beads to bead joint the pieces together, and we'll see where we go from there. This is going to be a really interesting one. I want this one to look pale, ethereal and almost translucent, so I'm using bright white polyester fibre fill to stuff the pieces with. I've picked out some decorative antique silver effect metal beads for the joints. I'm not sure how many of these beads will actually show on the finished doll, but they're nice to work with anyway, so I think it's worthwhile using metal beads. The bead joints need to hold quite a lot of tension, so you need a strong material for them. I do wish I could find some metal buttons in the right size for the button joints, but this is all I can find at the moment, so they'll have to do for the neck joint, but they're going to be hidden under the dress and the hair anyway, so that's going to be fine. The Victorians loved the centre parting, so I'm going to have to think about how I'm going to position this button on the top of the head. I'm going to be needle felting the hair in later, and the button can tend to get in the way, so I'm positioning it a little bit further back so I can add a centre parting in front of it. The legs will be hinge jointed onto the body with some top stitch thread, but I want to paint some boots before I do that. The arms will be attached to the body later after I've made the bodice. So I've got most of the tedious kind of construction part of the doll out of the way. I don't really mean it's tedious, it's just doing all the kind of stuffing, sewing, putting it together is frustrating because I just want to get on with the creative bit. And it just seems to take forever sometimes. But we've got all that done. And now I can start to have fun with the creative part of the doll making process. I've started on the face. I was doing the shading for the eyes last night as it was starting to get dark. Well, yesterday afternoon, really. It's getting dark so early now. We don't have very much light here at the best of times in winter, and it gets dark very early. And I do have some lights set up, but can never seem to get the lights in the right place. So trying to get shading right on the eyes has been frustrating, to say the least, and I still don't think I've got it even. No matter how you look at it, one side just seems a little bit bigger than the other, and then you check it in the mirror and then you can't see where you've gone wrong, and you try and correct it and then it looks wrong the other way, so you try and correct it again and it's like you're overcorrecting all the time. So I still think there is a little bit of adjustment to do on that, so I'm going to do that today. I'm going to add a little bit more shading in here and see if I can get that right. That's going to need a couple of coats of fixative to make it permanent, to stop it smudging. I've also given her some boots. I'd normally either do some lacing with some waxed linen thread or some hand painted details, but I've decided to keep them quite simple for this one because she's Victorian. I've gone for some little button-up details down the sides, but I have done a kind of ombre effect from grey to a pale green to give it the kind of old effect, like there's kind of some sort of lichen or mold or something growing on them, because she's an old graveyard spirit. I want to give her that feeling of having been around for a few years, just wandering in the mist. So I'm going to get on with the rest of the face now and then start on the dress. When I was designing the pieces for this, I made the upper arms in a grey because I was going to do kind of short sleeves and add a little bit of lace. But I've been looking at some of the mid-19th century fashions around the kind of 1830s, 1840s, and they had these big billowing sleeves, and I really like that look. It's quite sort of romantic and luxurious looking, quite sort of gothic. And I think that'd be quite fitting for this one. So I'm going to actually cover most of that. I might make them in lace, so you get that kind of translucent kind of feel, in which case some of the grey will show through. But I want something over this. Big billowing lacy sleeves and then a fitted bodice and a big skirt. I think underwear is quite important for the right shape in Victorian clothing, so I am going to do some bloomers and some underskirt petticoat type things as well, so you get a nice fullness of the skirt so it hangs nicely. So I'm going to get on with that now, see how we get on. The light is much better today, so it's a lot easier to get the shading even. I build up the depth of shadow with some dark green and black coloured pencil, then soften it with a blending pencil so it all blends in together. Then it'll need a couple of coats of fixative spray. I've made a bodice from light grey quilting cotton backed with some interfacing to keep the structure of the fabric. I'm trimming it with some vintage look cotton lace. I could have stitched this in place, but I don't want my hand stitching showing on it, so I'm gluing it. This is an acid-free tacky glue, so it won't go yellow over time. Once it's had time to dry a little bit, I'll go over it with a hot iron, and that helps to heat bond it. I've made some bloomers from white cotton with some broderie anglaise around the bottom for a vintage look. I've left the hem raw around the top because I'm going to just gather that up and get it in position, and then the bodice will go over the top of it. It takes a little bit of time just adjusting it and getting it in the right place so she can sit and stand without being restricted at all. Then I can stitch them in place. I've sewn on some antique silver effect metal buttons for the eyes. I think they look absolutely beautiful against the dark green shading. I'm adding some line detail in fine liner pens. I might add a little bit of colour to that, I'm not sure yet. I'm going to see how it looks. So it's Sunday morning and it's lovely and peaceful here at the moment. I don't know if it's going to get noisy later, so I thought I'd record something while it's still quiet. The nice thing about winter down here on the canal is there are less people around. In summer you get a lot of people on holiday and out for days out, and it can get a little bit noisy, but it's just so nice and peaceful. I can see the cormorant in the tree just outside. He's here for the winter. And I've seen some gooseanders diving, fishing out on the water. So it's just a lovely, peaceful vibe. So yesterday I got the face done on this one. I did manage to get the shading even eventually, and I've given her some metal button eyes. These are the last two. Well, I've got one of these buttons left and I can't find any more, which is annoying. So I'm going to have to find another alternative for the next doll. I added a little bit of dark green coloured pencil to the little leaves on the detail around here, and I've done some grey and black shading under the mouth. I haven't added any red for this one because I want it to look kind of ghostly and dead. The bodice, I've added some little faux pearls as buttons down the front on the lace, and that's looking really cute. I'm pleased with that. So next on this one I need to do a skirt, some nice lace detail. I might use some more of this broderie anglaise on that, and I want to make some billowing sleeves. Please excuse the noises the boat's making in the background. What I'll do is I'll probably leave them open at the top and then joint the arms on at the shoulders and then gather them up around that so the arms can still be moved. That's my plan. I already have a name for this one. I'm not going to tell you what it is just yet though. You'll have to watch till the end to find that out. So yeah, a skirt. I need a petticoat, a skirt, sleeves. I'm not sure if I'll get that done today. I need to record a video for the channel members. I'm keeping more of the tutorial practical content to channel members at the moment as an experiment because I'm finding that they don't get shown to as many people. And so I make a tutorial and it's only a few people who are interested in actually making dolls get to see that, and it doesn't get pushed out to a wider audience, and then videos I make after that don't get shown to a wider audience. So I'm trying keeping this kind of video more to the sort of public channel, and then practical tutorial stuff for channel members. So at the moment I'm making a series on template making, so by the time this video goes out that will be up for members. And this month's tutorial video is about shapes for template pieces, so how to create the shape for the head and the body and that kind of thing. So I'm going to record that today and edit it and hopefully get that up later. So I'm not sure how much work I'll get to do on this one today. I have got a few days left to do this. This one is due on Friday and I'll have to take photos and edit them. But it's fine. It's fine. It'll happen. We'll get there. I started the skirt with broad rayon glaze gathered up along the hem of some grey cotton. Then I decided I wanted a lace tier over the top of that. Then I remembered as I finished sewing it that I didn't want the lace sewn into the seam at the back. So I ended up unpicking some of the lace and sewing the ends together and then sewing it along the top again, and that seemed to work all right. It looked quite good, so I'm happy with that. I wanted to keep the skirt quite translucent, but I also wanted a nice full shape. The Victorians would have done this with a crinoline, but that seemed a little bit excessive for this one, so I decided on a tulle petticoat instead, just to give it a little bit of structure, and that seems to have done the job. I bead joint the arms at the shoulders, and then I just need to put the sleeves on over the top. So it's Tuesday morning and we're almost there. I did the sleeves and the skirt yesterday, and I got onto the hair as well. You would think that doing an updo on a doll like this would involve just needle felting the hair and then putting it up like you put up human hair, but it doesn't really work like that when you're needle felting because the yarn is just far too bulky. So it's more like when you're painting a picture. You get the shape of it and then you start adding the detail over the top. So I needle felted in the first layer and got the basic shape of the hair, and then I added a couple of long braided strands to get the center parting at the front, and then I started wrapping them round, and that turned out to be a bit of a challenge, getting the strands where I wanted them to go. I wasn't really sure where to go with them, but I just kept wrapping them round, needle felting little bits in and adding a few stitches here and there to hold it in place until I kind of felt like it was looking kind of like a Victorian hairstyle. And I wasn't sure what to do with the ends. At first I was gonna kind of tuck them in, but then I thought, well, she's dead. She doesn't care that much about her hair. She's a ghost. So I figured she might look a little bit kind of wild and disheveled. Anyway, I thought she might look like her hair's kind of come undone a little bit. So I decided to leave the ends out. I've secured them, but just kind of trimmed them and left them a little bit kind of wild. Just hanging down at the side here, so it looks like she's just kind of coming undone. So I'm quite happy with that. That's looking pretty good. So now today all I need to do is add some accessories and then she'll be ready for photographs. I thought I might give her some keys. I'm kind of formulating a story for her in my head. I see her as kind of a gatekeeper spirit. Like she'd watch over the cemetery gates and keep watch over who comes and goes and what spirits are allowed to leave. And I quite like that idea. So I figured I'd give her a bunch of keys. Now I have done this before with the crone doll I made recently, and I'll put a link up to that video somewhere up here if you'd like to go and watch that one next. Watch this one first, but then go and watch that one next. So yeah, some of these little key charms I've put onto a ring, and I'm going to attach those onto her hand somehow. And then she needs some sort of necklace as well. So going to do that and then set up to take some photos. Now for the collaboration photos, I need 2 pictures. I need a photo of her in standing against a sort of plainish sort of background. I've got my backdrops for that, which I may have to play around with a bit to get it tall enough to have her standing in front of it, but I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. And then the other photo needs to be a full-length shot of her cut out so she can be added to the group photo. I do have a couple of doll stands. and I can't find one of them. The smaller stand that would... My cat is just jumping up on the bed. So the smaller stand that would be the right size for this doll, I can't find anywhere. So it might still be in storage somewhere. I don't know. I have got another quite old stand, but this is a little bit big. This is the lowest it'll go, and it's still slightly too high to go underneath the skirt. So I might be able to do something with that. I'm not sure. If not, I'm going to have to find something to stand her in. And I was thinking maybe I could find a jar or a glass or something and just kind of sit her into it and then cover it with the skirt. That might work. Other than that, there's the other option is using some strings. I have a shelf above the desk where I take photos here. I could attach a string up there and then kind of attach it to her back so she's standing. So there's a few ways around it. There's a few ways I can do it. So I'm going to play with that later and see if I can find a nice standing pose for the photo. And that's it. So I've got my work cut out. That's going to be a full day's work, I think. By the time... I don't know if I'll edit photos today. I'll probably do some editing tomorrow. But right, I'm going to get on with it and get this one finished. If you're enjoying this video, by the way, please don't forget to hit the like button and let me know. You can also subscribe if you like, so you don't miss the next one. In life, Pearl Mornington visited the cemetery often. It was a peaceful place where she would wander among the graves of her ancestors and feel very much at home. Placing flowers on her grandmother's grave, Pearl vowed that she would always be there to protect and care for this sacred space. In death, her vow was not forgotten, and Pearl took on the role of cemetery gatekeeper. She keeps a watchful eye over the blackened iron gates. All are welcome to seek solace here. However, this ghostly presence ensures that those who enter are respectful, and neither the living nor the dead leave unless she allows them to do so. I think everybody did an amazing job with this theme. I'll leave some Instagram links in the description if you want to check out the other artists involved. If you've enjoyed this one, I'll leave another video here that you can go and watch now, and I'll see you next time. Bye.